We're going international. It's really, the gloves are really, we're skipping around the globe and going to Japan because today's Recreates is all about Tokyo banana, which I'm very excited about. It comes in this beautiful package that I did not want to open, so I haven't previewed this at all. It is like Japan's version of a Twinkie, a kind of like cream-filled cake, and it's banana flavored. It looks really cute. I'm very excited to try it. I almost hate to open it because it's so nicely wrapped. Even more lovely packaging. Tokyo banana is the flavor loved by people of all ages, made with the hope of becoming a warm memory, not just of Tokyo, but of Japan. Lovely. Ooh, it really does have a kind of Twinkie feel. It's like a little slightly banana-shaped cake. Okay, interesting. It says Tokyo banana, and then in quotation marks, I found it. Okay, interesting. First thing I want to do is smell it. It's very cute. It smells really good, actually. Like it smells like real banana, and it's not overpowering, and I don't get a lot of what ends up being like a sort of like chemical preservative smell that is like a little off. It just smells really good. I mean, it doesn't smell like buttery or anything. It just smells like a little bit like banana, and in a good way. It's quite clearly this kind of sponge cake. When I touch it, it feels delightfully soft. Not wet, but like moist. And it comes in this little banana-shaped tray, which is probably going to be helpful for me for forming it. It kind of clearly has like a bottom and then a kind of curved surface. There's seams here in the cake, which is going to be helpful to know. It feels like a really nice sponge cake. I'm going to break it open. I want to see what this cream filling is like. It's a really quite thin layer of sponge, very, very tender sponge cake. One thing that happens with banana, that it's happening here, is anytime you're baking or cooking banana, it goes pretty gray. And that's the color that we have here. But like theirs is gray, mine's going to be gray. The cake is super tender. The filling has a kind of starchiness. It's very thick, it kind of coats your mouth. You can use a little salt. It's pretty sweet, delicious, love it. It's so good. Should I just trace it? I mean, it's not particularly banana shaped. I would say it like hints or nods at a banana shape. It's just like oblong piece of cake that like slightly curves to one side. I don't need to make mine into like the actual shape of a real banana. That would be difficult. I think if they're not doing it, why should I do it? The length is 9.5 centimeters. I'll take the width in the center. It's about 3.5. Let's do height, 2.5 centimeters. It's kind of heavy for its size. The proportion of filling to cake is pretty high. So there's this natural seam on like the outer curve. Is it 2 pieces of cake put together? Is it 1 piece of cake? There's like a bottom and a top to it, basically. It's not like a Twinkie where you bake the cake and then you fill it. It, to me, is very clearly like cake that is wrapped around a filling. Like a thin layer of cake that's then kind of molded. It really is impressively rounded. Like maybe it's baked in a mold. It has definitely like a flat side that it rests on. And then the rest of it is kind of domed and curved around it. So it's something that really holds its shape, which it would have to, because with such a high proportion of filling, you really couldn't make this with like a loose, runny filling. Whatever the starch is that's thickening it, there's a lot of it. Let's call it a tablespoon of filling. So I'm gonna cut this sponge in half. The thickness is a kind of generous 1/4 inch or 7 or 8 centimeters. Did I say 7 to 8 centimeters? I meant millimeters. I got it, okay. I got the ingredients. Wow, this technology is incredible. Fresh confectionery ingredients is what it says. Banana cream, parentheses, starch, syrup, banana paste, skimmed milk powder, sugar, banana puree, vegetable oil, egg yolk, wheat flour, gelatin, liqueur. Fascinating, close parentheses. And then it says parentheses, domestically produced, liquid egg, sugar, wheat flour, vegetable oil, emulsified oil, dried egg white / modified starch, seasoning, parentheses, amino acid, emulsifier, parentheses, derived from soybeans, leavening agent, sorbitol flavoring, sodium acetate, carotene pigment. It has no salt in it at all.
It says something about aminos, isn't that like a salty flavor?
It says seasoning, parentheses, amino acid, so yeah. I know where I'm going with this in terms of the recipes. The filling is a like cooked banana custard, and then the rest of the ingredients are basically the ingredients in a kind of like industrialized version of a chiffon cake. Not surprisingly, we're gonna have to be a little more creative when it comes to construction. I feel pretty good about this, and you know why I feel good about this? Because I have a great recipe in What's for Dessert for a banana cream pie with a delicious and pretty thick banana custard. And I have a great recipe for a chiffon sponge cake. So make it into a banana and we'll call it a day. Let me start with my game plan. Make banana custard plus cool. Bake chiffon sponge. I'm gonna say construction apparatus. Assembly plus chill.
So you don't think you need to bake them in the shape, you can form them after?
I think my best bet is to just get a really thin sponge. I don't think that this is a hollowed out sponge. I think it is a flat layer of sponge worked into a banana shape. This is my recipe for, actually, check out the episode where I make this banana sesame cream tart, kind of my version of a banana cream pie. But I am going to make this recipe for the filling, which is a banana custard. Now, interestingly, this is a banana sesame version, and the custard has, I think it's 2 teaspoons of toasted sesame oil in it, and it is so delicious. It's like weirdly delicious to have that sesame oil in this banana flavored custard. I'm going to omit it because I'm not going for that flavor, but I'm going to use basically the same recipe because it makes a pretty firm custard that you can cut and is like sliceable. So I think this is going to kind of nail it. These are a tiny bit underripe. I do feel like when you're baking, they should be speckled. And I just remember that we had a bunch of bananas that we got and got overripe and I froze them. So I think I'm actually going to take that out of the freezer and use them instead of the fresh banana because they're just going to have that like very intense flavor and be very mushy. I'm going to get this into a glass container and microwave them, soften them up. Actually, you know what's really good about using frozen banana in this is when I thaw them, they're going to release a lot of liquid. I'm going to get rid of that liquid. And that is going to leave a much higher proportion of starch in the banana solids. And that is going to help me build a pretty starchy, thick custard, which is what I want. We're going for a smooth custard. So I'm gonna blend it. My really old immersion blender that I had for like 15 years finally croaked, so I got a new one. I do think I'm gonna increase the amount of cornstarch a little bit. Salt, I'm gonna eyeball it. Sugar. So let me grab the banana. See all the water that the banana's released? And what I also like about this is not only is this going to increase the starch content that the bananas are contributing, but I'm gonna get more banana solids, and the liquid is then replaced by the heavy cream, so it's just gonna, I think, make a more intensely flavored custard. You know what I should do is I should probably set this over a strainer. Should have thought of that before, hold on. I'm gonna let my bananas drain. Then I'll measure out the cup, and then I'm gonna actually just use this measuring cup to measure out my cream. Now I'm gonna do my yolks. So I have everything I need for my custard. The sugar and starch and salt already in the saucepan, whisked together so that there's no lumps. I'm going to off the heat, add my yolks, whisk those in really well. This is my yolk mixture with that sugar and starch and a little bit of salt. I've beaten it pretty well, so you can see that it's kind of light and voluminous. It's gotten lighter in color. You want it to kind of get that ribbony texture. And now I'm ready to add my dairy. You know, one thing I didn't call for, but I might add is just a little vanilla. Why not enhance it wherever I can? The thing I want to be very careful about here is really mixing this thoroughly and getting the whisk into any kind of like little dead zones in the pan around the sides where there might be some trapped yolk mixture, because that's going to really overcook. I really just want this whole thing to be very smooth, but I'm going to blend it, so that's going to help a lot. I like to go in with a spatula and really scrape the bottom and sides to make sure everything is incorporated very well. I'm gonna add my overripe mashed banana. And now I'm gonna blend it. Make sure you submerge it before you turn it on. Does this thing keep beeping? Is that what's beeping? Yeah. Whoa, has a turbo setting. Oh my God, okay, I think we're good. Now it's time to cook the custard. I think I'm going to switch to a larger whisk for this. So I wanna cook this until the cornstarch is fully activated, and that means it has to come to a boil and stay there for a little while. I wanna sustain that temperature. So I'm starting to see some telltale signs. It's starting to hold the marks of the whisk as it thickens. Now I'm gonna stop whisking for a few seconds and I'm gonna look for bubbles. See those big bubbles? So now I'm boiling, and I'm gonna whisk really, really vigorously for the next like 15 seconds. I'm gonna take it off the heat, and I'm gonna pour it through my strainer. This is not really a big enough bowl. I would rather that my pastry cream were a little bit overcooked, frankly, because I'm passing it through a strainer, than undercooked. Oh, was there water in the bottom of that bowl? A little bit, huh? Really, the only thing that caught in the strainer are bits of like banana seed. Sometimes if there's egg that curls, you end up just passing the egg through the sieve and it smooths out, so you don't even know. I want to chill this. So anytime you're doing a pastry cream or a pudding or anything like that, any kind of cooked custard, you want to place some plastic wrap or film directly onto the surface as it cools, because that's going to prevent a skin from forming. And then when you go to mix it in, it just makes like little bits, hardened bits. You don't want that. Now let's go on to the sponge cake. I'm going to do a quick cleanup. Get this in the fridge. So I am making a style of sponge cake called chiffon, which is an oil-based sponge cake. I'm gonna bake this in a sheet tray because I need a lot of surface area and a very thin layer of sponge. So sponge cake is a style of cake that's very light, and it gets its lightness from beaten egg whites. It gets incorporated in. Now chiffon cake is different than other types of sponge cake in that it also has a little bit of chemical leavening. So I'm gonna add baking powder. I have sugar. I'm gonna grab cake flour. Cake flour keeps it super, super tender. So I need a little salt, I need eggs, I need milk, a little vanilla, and a little cream of tartar. I'm using a hand mixer for this because there is the need to beat the egg whites. It's just much easier with some type of electric mixer. I'm gonna start by measuring out my dry ingredients. Cake flour. Cake flour is a wheat flour that is lower in protein than all-purpose. There is less gluten production, so you just get a more tender cake. Just softer texture overall. Salt and baking powder. Now I want to separate my eggs. Another thing that's nice about chiffon cake is the eggs get used, like whites and yolks are 1-to-1, so you don't have any like whites or yolks left over. As opposed to like an angel food cake, which is a sponge cake and is all egg white. Anytime you have a sponge cake, you're usually beating the egg whites with sugar. It helps to make them much more flexible. It prevents overbeating. It makes them like softer, glossier. So half the sugar goes with the egg whites, half goes with the yolks. To the whites, I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. Cream of tartar is a stabilizer. It's gonna help to make a more stable egg white foam. Often you'll have recipes that will say like, add the sugar slowly to the egg whites as you beat them. The truth is, if you add all of the sugar at the beginning, it will still whip, and what you'll get is a foam with much finer air bubbles. So that's what I want here. I don't want like big and little air bubbles. So I'm gonna start by adding all the sugar at once, and it's just gonna make a finer textured foam with the egg whites. It's also really good at the room temp. That will help them whip better. I'm gonna start on low, and it kind of helps to break them up a little bit, make them a little bit more liquid. So I'm gonna slowly increase the speed. They've over doubled in volume already. They're nice and opaque. They're getting glossy, but these need to whip much more. I need stiff peaks. Once you add the sugar, it is much harder to overbeat the egg whites, but it is possible. So you don't want to overbeat, otherwise it will be difficult to incorporate them into the yolk mixture. That's pretty good. See the little peaks off the ends of the whisk? See how they're standing upright? These are good. I don't want to beat any more than this. Now I'm going to focus on the yolk mixture, and I don't have to wash the beaters, which is nice. I'm going to add the second half of the sugar, the remaining 1/4 cup. Start to beat these. I want to beat this mixture just until the egg yolks are thick and pale and kind of lightened. I'm going to now stream in the oil. The recipe calls for neutral oil. I don't really have any neutral oil at the moment, so I'm using olive. It's not really going to add a lot of flavor to the sponge. I'm going to stream this in, almost like you're making like a sweet mayonnaise. You could use melted butter here, but the oil is important for flexibility. So now I'm going to add my vanilla. I'm going to turn down the speed. I'm going to stream in my milk. All right, now I'm going to add my dry ingredients, mix on low. So I'm done with the mixer. Now I'm going to switch to my spatula, and it's just a matter of incorporating the egg whites into the yolk mixture. So we do that by folding. You want that airiness. So I start with about 1/3 of the mixture, use a big flexible spatula, and it's about kind of scraping down the side and along the bottom, and then kind of with a turn of your wrist, inverting the mixture. Stop once most of the streaks have disappeared and then add, I'm just gonna add the rest of it. So the idea here is to work quickly because egg white foam is kind of inherently unstable. It will start to deflate. My oven is already preheated. My pan is ready to go. You can see how light and airy this mixture is. It does smell a little bit like olive oil, but I think that flavor is not gonna be detectable at the end. I'm gonna get this into my pan and I'm gonna grab a spatula to spread it out. By tapping it on the counter, you'll pop some of the larger air bubbles, which you want because you want that really fine texture. I'm going for such a thin layer. I'm not adding all the batter. Now what happens with sponge cake is the heat of the oven warms up the air in all the air bubbles and they expand and it lifts the cake. But often what happens is because there isn't a ton of structure to it, there's not a lot of flour, it will then collapse a bit as it cools. So it's hard to know how that's going to compare to the thickness coming out. So I don't really know how thick to go. Also, the sheet tray is not perfectly flat, so it's going to actually have different thicknesses. I'm going to grab my cake tester. I mean, it's like 6 or 7 millimeters. I don't know.
Isn't it going to puff a little?
It's going to puff, but it's also going to then deflate. I'm going to go with it. I think it'll be okay. And before I stick it in the oven, though, I am going to give it a couple more taps on the counter to pop some of those larger bubbles. There's a baby sleeping. All right. I'm gonna get this into the oven. I'm gonna bake quickly because it's a really thin layer, like less than 10 minutes. It's not perfectly even in terms of the thickness. I blame my own spreading skills, but I also kind of blame a not perfectly flat sheet tray. So we will see once this has a chance to cool what the thickness is like. And I'm probably gonna go with it no matter what. I just hope it's close. Bake chiffon sponge, see I did that. Here's my cooled sponge cake. I know that I can't use the sponge along the very edges because that part is just a little bit dried out. It gets a little bit hard. I'm gonna get this onto a clean piece of parchment paper. I'm gonna invert it. One potential problem is because the batter is so wet, it did make these wrinkles in the parchment paper. This side looks pretty good, but some of these bigger wrinkles are going to show up in the final banana. I mean, look, the thickness is good. The thickness is, at least where I'm measuring, is right where I want it to be. I'm gonna have to just be strategic about cutting around the wrinkles, I think. Let me just see what I got here. I have muffin pans, which actually kind of work, but not quite. Do you know how you can make like molds out of cornstarch? Should we just roll with this?
Yep.
People are gonna hate this.
This is how you make it. Cat's cornstarch.
Oh, yes. But you gotta go. Surprisingly, our production assistant's trip to the hardware store didn't take too long. So now I have 2 tubes of silicone caulk. I have cornstarch. Don't really have any way of getting it out of the tube. Think about that. I guess I could slice it open. Any thoughts on how to do this? Get this out.
Caulking gun.
If I put it on something high, like if I just, right? Is this gonna slide? I mean, I could. Will the hammer help? What about sawing it in half? I don't have like newsprint or anything. So I'm gonna use a container that I don't care about. I'm gonna put some gloves on. Doesn't this look like meringue? Oh my gosh, so sticky already. I think I maybe added too much cornstarch. I maybe have to add more silicone. I'm switching to my hands. Can one of you look up this whole concept and tell me what am I doing wrong? How to make a silicone and cornstarch mold at home.
Sure, making a silicone and cornstarch mold at home is pretty straightforward. You just need a few materials: 100% silicone cork, cornstarch, a bit of water, and a few drops of food colouring if you want to add colour. First, squeeze out the silicone cork into a bowl. Add a generous amount of cornstarch and a small amount of water, then mix it all together. The mixture should form a dough-like consistency. The cornstarch helps the silicone cure faster and makes it easier to handle. Once it's well mixed, knead it into a smooth ball. Press the mixture around the object you want to mold, making sure to cover it evenly and thoroughly. Let it cure for a few hours until it's firm. After it's set, carefully remove the object and you've got your mold. Let me know if you need any more details.
I like this lady. It does kind of feel like a wet bread dough. 50% of it is on the gloves. How do we know if she's right?
It's just Googling what you already Googled.
Yeah.
Might be time to go no gloves.
I don't want to touch this. This is so stupid. I feel like this went off the rails so quickly. I was doing too well. It's really, the gloves are really. Okay, all right. It's okay. No, I'm just laughing because Cal is laughing. All right, let's try to get this in here. It kind of has the texture of like frosting at this point. I would modify that lady's instructions and say that the best thing to do is to start with the cornstarch and add the silicone to that, because otherwise it just sticks to everything. This is a loss. This glove. I gotta get out of these. This is actually kind of starting to harden. I know that I made like a ridiculous mess, but this kind of works. So I'm actually forming the shape of the bananas by hand. It's actually at this point like a really pretty good workable consistency. I'm gonna try to mix more of this. I'm gonna have a totally different approach now that I understand what the consistency is. Thank God for the internet, because it said that you can touch this and knead with your hands and it's not harmful. And I'll get some plastic wrap because we're not actually gonna touch the food to the silicone. I want to grab my cold custard from the fridge. I'm going to get it in my piping bag. It's obviously way more custard than I'll need. I'm very excited about this. Okay, that can go off to the side. I'm going to start cutting pieces of sponge from the center. I hope I haven't let it dry out too much by just sitting out on the counter. I want to cut sort of rectangles of sponge, avoiding the larger wrinkles in here. I'm giving myself a generous amount to work with because I'll want to trim. The smooth side, the nicer side, of the sponge is going to be the outside of the Tokyo banana. It's a little bit dry. I might want to spritz it with a little water, just to soften it up. This is a big piece. I think I need a bigger piece of plastic to lay across here. I maybe just need one big piece. Kind of worked. Really kind of did. You know what, this might be an actual like sacrificial first piece of cake, because what I might want to do is get it pressed into my mold and then trimmed, and then I might use it as a guide for cutting out the rest of my pieces of cake. I want to sort of assemble these actually one at a time. I'm going to cut a little opening in my pastry bag, not a big one, but maybe 3/4 of an inch. So I'm going to start by fitting in my first piece. I'm going to fill it with my pastry cream, and I think the pastry cream will help to like create weight so that it will sink into the mold a bit. Now I need to cut a piece of cake for the bottom. I want the sort of bottom piece of cake to fit inside the like rounded layer. So I have to just sort of figure out how I want to do that. I'm gonna have to just cut it. I mean, I've kind of cut it the same size as the base. I might need to trim a little bit so that it just sits inside. Now what I want to do is really tightly wrap this in the plastic. It's the pressure and the moisture from the custard that is going to help to get everything to adhere. All right, so I'm just going to repeat that process to get them all nicely wrapped up and weighted and chilled. So the Tokyo banana homemade version have been chilling for a little over an hour, hour 15. I'm gonna pull them from the fridge and I wanna take one out and see if it seems like it's been enough time for the whole thing to kind of like set and hold its shape. Let's pop one out. So here's mine. It's pretty good. I do feel like it has adhered. I have some cracking. I actually feel like my shape is kind of better. I overshot the curve a little bit. It definitely is holding its shape. It does feel like there's adhesion. To be a real stickler, I could go in and just trim off some of the cake to like round it out a little bit. I mean, that actually looks really good. All right, maybe I'm being a little bit particular, but I feel really good about it. I mean, visually, obviously there's a difference here, but like similar, like there's a seam there, there's a seam there. They're very similar in weight and also in like tactile feeling of like, in terms of the moisture in the sponge cake. Very, very similar. Can I just say that mine's more yellow and I feel like that's more banana-y. Total weight is 39 grams. Their weight, 38 grams. Pretty close. Because of the yellow color and the shape, I'm like, that says banana more to me than that one does. Let's do a cross-section of theirs and a cross-section of mine. Not bad. The sponge was not too thin, actually, at all. I was worried. I would say there's slightly less filling in mine overall, but like, I think it looks really good. Let's taste mine. Immediately, what I get is more salt. I think I mismeasured the salt in the sponge. It's a very salty sponge cake. Similar texture in the fillings. I kind of love my version. I mean, I really like the original too, but I like that mine has just like more seasoned. There's some of that vanilla flavor in there and a lot of banana flavor. Look at how nicely the cake encloses the filling. I would say that their sponge is a little bit more tender than mine. What's good about the sponge cake is that it's still tender and yet it also has the flexibility and strength to kind of take the shape of the mold that I made. So I'm happy with that. Mine is weirdly salty. Something happened with the salt in that sponge cake. The filling is perfection. This one is really fun. I hope one day to visit Japan and eat these actually in Tokyo maybe. But until then, I'm definitely satisfied to just recreate them at home. I feel like I just turned up the dial a little bit on the flavor, especially in the filling, added some seasoning, and learned that I could make my own molds with silicone caulk and cornstarch. We'll definitely be using that again, I foresee. This was new to me before this episode, but truly one of the more delicious, like packaged snack foods that I've tackled on the show. So if you have a particularly good one that is like, I wouldn't know because I live in the US and you live somewhere else, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching and don't forget to like and subscribe.